Ladies and gentlemen, my name is TotalBiscuit. I'm here to ask and answer one simple question. WTF is Hero Generations. It's best described, I think, as a top-down roguelite strategy game. It's actually closer to the more traditional roguelike style than most of the games that claim to be roguelikes. In this game, every time you take a move, the enemies take a move, which is the classic turn-based style of a roguelike game, but considering the speed you can move, it almost appears like the game kind of runs in real time, even though it clearly doesn't. You could stop it at any time, but you can also move very, very quickly. It's got very simplistic combat, very similar to a roguelike, but with Hero Generations, what you're trying to do is to build up towns and construct buildings and go through the generations of your heroic family and eventually have one of the generations defeat all of the enemies in the world. Every time you move, you are going to lose 1 year of your life, and eventually your character will die. If your character dies without procreating, that's the end of the game, and the whole save file is wiped. So, we're going to dive into the middle of the game, because it's much better to show you a little bit of development there, rather than go from the very start. But first, we'll have a quick look at the settings menu. Not a lot to see here. Bear in mind, it is a top-down, 2D, turn-based, rogue-like thingy. So, not exactly much in terms of graphics options here. Audio controls are a bit weak, I've got to say. It would be nice to be able to separate the music and the sound. That would be good. Also be nice to have things like colorblind options and the ability to change around the UI. None of that's really here. All you've got is screen resolution, the ability to turn special effects on or off, or to erase your save data if you wish to do so for whatever reason. So, it's not exactly impressive, but simultaneously, it's not really a game that requires all that much in terms of options. What I will say is, from the very start, this game does run at 30 frames per second, which I know is going to annoy a lot of people, although it is a game that is turn-based, so it running at 30 FPS doesn't really harm the game in any way. It would just be nice to see it running at 60. Okay, so every time you start off, and this is a 10th generation hero, so we've had 9 generations before, you have an area which is basically blocked off by fog of war, and you'll notice that all of these squares have different things on them. So I've developed this town to a metropolis, and I've built some expensive buildings around them. I've got a monument here. Every time I go to this town, if I have a mate in this town, they will automatically mate with me, regardless of my fame or my fortune or anything like that. Usually, if you want a really desirable mate, you've got to achieve certain things within your lifespan, like you've got to have achieved a certain amount of fame, which is the stat up to the top right here. You can see it. My current fame is 1070. My top fame in any given playthrough has been 10,000. Now, outside of that, what you've got is picture your hero here, and you also have 2 item slots. This gets a little bit annoying, and I'll talk about that in a minute. You also have 2 traits. Now, traits can be inherited through generations. So if you get a very desirable trait, you often want to breed to try and make sure that you keep that trait. And that usually happens if you breed early. The later on you breed, the less likely you are of getting that trait. So there's a bit of a risk-reward there. You can go out and do a lot in your lifetime, but if you end up mating and settling down early, you have a higher chance of passing on a desirable trait. There are also the higher quality mate you get, the better traits you can pass on. These are the years left in my life. As you go through various milestones, you'll gain strength and then lose strength the older you get. So that will happen. In the next 15 years, I'm going to get another milestone. Now, every time I move, it takes a year off my life. So I move to this area to collect something there. We're going to... I could grab something from the shrine, but my inventory is full, as you can see. You're very limited in terms of what you can actually carry. Now, all of these buildings surrounding the city will develop the city in a certain way. So if we have a look at this list right here, and a lot of these are blocked out because you've got to discover them yourself, you can make various kinds of towns. There are 19 types of towns in total, and you will be able to change things around and create special towns which will give you unique bonuses depending on what buildings are adjacent to them. So I have a blacksmith here which repairs all the buildings automatically. I have a monument, very expensive, and I've also got a factory which is making me 1,000 gold every 10 years, and I have a tavern here which is increasing the number of rare mates that I have available to me. This was a mistake. Okay, so I've gone into combat. Now, the combat is just ludicrously simple in this game. All you do is you click attack, and it rolls within your strength here. So I have 11 strength, which means that the dice is going to roll anywhere between 1 to 11. Now, I lost that fight because this guy's clearly a lot tougher than me. Now, it's kind of my own fault because I could have hovered over him and it would tell me that it was dangerous and I could see his attack rating. So it was pretty stupid to run into that, but that's a little bit of a demonstration of how the combat system, quote-unquote, works. It's not much of a system, really, is it? It really is a case of just running into the enemy, but as I mentioned before, that's actually very similar to the way that old-school roguelike games often work. or roguelite games, in fact. They simply have very simplistic combat systems. Alright, we're going to build a barracks here. Now, I can spend money to build a barracks, then the barracks is going to give me a strength upgrade if I visit it. I can build a second barracks here, I can even build a third, and that will cause a number of things to happen. I'm going to pop down the temple here, and the temple's going to allow me to increase my lifespan over time. Alright, we're going to go fight him now. We have a decent shot at beating him. And we didn't. Alright, well, we do have a shield, so hopefully we can, we can deflect all the damage it's going to do. Every time you take damage, it takes that amount of years off your life, so you really don't want to lose too often. But there we go. I've now visited a stronghold, which has given me plus 10 strength. There's another stronghold here. I can go visit this one again. And I've now reached a milestone in my life, and you'll notice that my lifespan is gradually decreasing. So, every time you get to a milestone, you get to flip over a card, which is going to give you benefits, and every time you breed, you also get to flip over a number of cards, which is going to give you a bunch of random benefits. Now, you'll also be able to unlock cards which will show exactly what they are before you pick them up. There we go, much stronger now. I've got strength of 64, should be able to fight this guy, no problem at all. He has a strength of 7, I'm going to absolutely crush him. There you go. That's a nice and easy kill. You can actually beat up the heroes of other towns to gain fame, and they'll also drop their loot when they die, so it's kind of worth doing. Now, the reason I'm collecting strength right now is I'm going to try and travel to a different world. There are a lot of different worlds in the game, and some of them are a lot harder than others. So we're going to go visit some of these other worlds and see what we can do there. Each of the worlds has a set of objectives that you can achieve for fame. And as you probably noticed, there are benefits to getting a bunch of fame. If you get a lot of fame, you can develop your hometown into a kingdom, which is going to give you all sorts of different bonuses and things like that. And outside of that, you're going to be hunting down special items, like I have this Sunfire Shield, for instance. If I head over to this path right here, this will take me to the next world. That is the desert world right there. There we go. And I'm going to travel onto that. And there we go. We are now in a different world entirely, which has a different tile set. It also has a bunch of different unique buildings that you can visit. So it's kind of like Heroes of Might and Magic in that respect. So this has a Fountain of Youth. Every 500 years, it restores 50 lifespan. So I can visit the Fountain of Youth and get a ton of that. We've got an oasis there, which I can't actually get to right now because I don't have a raft. I'd have to go and buy one. I can also sell items if I so desire. Now, if I look at the quest map, it'll tell me what objectives there actually are here. Kill the boss a kilo for 70,000 fame. Reaching it could be difficult. I'd have to get through the tunnel there. You can also dig up ancient treasure, find all the buried treasure here, which you need a shovel for, build a monument, find the Cave of Legend, all sorts of things like that. So every time you go to these areas, they're randomly generated. They don't change, they change every playthrough, they don't change every generation, but they will sort of block, they'll give you a sort of a fog of war for whatever reason, which will block off your ability to discover what's going on until you actually move into it. But every time you restart the game, all of these areas are differently generated. So I had a game where the only place I could go was a sort of watery island level, and I couldn't find a place to buy a raft, which means I actually couldn't catch the boss because the boss was in the ocean all the time. I don't know if that was a bug or if I was just a dumbass and I was missing the place to buy the raft. It is possible that I was being completely moronic. Now, let's see if we can beat this guy. We're on 94 strength, and I've got the sword. It's a crappy sword, but it's a sword nonetheless. And there's a bonus 3 strength as well from the card flip. So, what is he at? 140. It might be worth a shot. He does 10 damage. I have the Sunfire Shield, which is going to deflect up to 15. So, yeah, let's go fight him. We'll give him a shot. And I lose the dice roll. That's unfortunate, but hopefully I defend. And I do. Okay, so he doesn't do any damage to me. But you can... Oh, he stole my money, though. Damn it. So you can see kind of the objective. You only have a certain number of years to really do what you have to do. And then your ability starts to decline. And you've got to think about going to find a mate. Let's see what we can build here. Maybe we could put a bunch of temples in this area, which will actually increase lifespan. That would be quite good. There we go. That'll give you a couple of extra turns to fight with. So, it's really about resource management and time management for the most part. You don't want to wait too long, but simultaneously there's risk-reward involved. But of course, if you wait way too long, there's a situation where you can actually lose the game entirely, which I'm not 100% convinced by its fairness in that respect. I think you can avoid it by managing your time correctly, but if you run low on years, and you end up going to the only town within reach, and it turns out the mate that's available there has too high requirements, you die. Because you won't be able to get to another town in time, and that deletes your entire saved game. That might be slightly unreasonable, but simultaneously it's kind of your own fault for pushing your luck there. So I feel there's a little bit of a a push-your-luck element involved in that, and I don't necessarily think that the game is responsible for that. We're going to end up killing this hero here, which is a bit brutal, but never mind. We're going to kill you for fame. There we go. So I can see why some people would find that appealing. I think there's a genuine appeal in a lot of roguelite or roguelike games for those kind of mechanics. I am personally not the biggest fan of them, but that's kind of a subjective idea. I think that if you can really feel dicked over by the game if you end up in a situation like that, because the mates that you get are somewhat randomly generated. Although you can stack the deck in your favor with something like a monument, for instance. Once you've got a monument up, as long as I can get back to this town, I'm guaranteed a good mate. In fact, we're probably going to go and do that. I've got 40 years left. Probably go get that mate. And then I can try and pass on some traits. You also pass on your items from generation to generation. They become heirlooms, so you want to make sure that you've collected the right items. So, what's kind of wrong with it? Well, I mean, there's definitely a few things that I found annoying about the game in particular. One thing is the fact that unless you have a blacksmith built, which is only available at, like, I think it's the 6th or the 8th generation, so you don't get these initially, buildings actually crumble over time. So you'll notice that this thing has 300 years left on it, which is a lot, but that's because I've got a blacksmith built here. So this entire town is totally fine because the blacksmith will keep repairing this stuff. But until you get the blacksmith, and the blacksmith's very expensive, you need to pick up a hammer. There's a hammer on this square right here. And you have to go around and manually repair the buildings. So if you don't do that, what's going to happen is the buildings will disappear over time, and you have to rebuild them, which is super annoying. I just find it to be obnoxious maintenance for the most part. Ah, I unlocked a trait. Okay, that's Charmer. Alright, I don't actually need Charmer. That's a trait I could very easily do without, I think. I really should get a better weapon if... I don't know if I've got the cash for it. This wooden sword is just awful. Weapon shop's got, let's see, bombs. No, nothing really desirable there. Unfortunately, sometimes it'll spawn a weapon shop and not give you the weapons you need, and as far as I can tell, it never changes what's on sale, so this entire weapon shop is completely useless. It may be that once you buy other items, it replaces them, but outside of that, from what I've seen, they generate the items, and then that's what they stick with. I would like to see those change from generation to generation. That would be quite nice. Although, there is an argument against that, because you might be planning out for the next generation, say, right, I'm going to make this money, then I'm going to go visit the weapon shop, I'm going to go buy this item. And the item management is another issue this game has, because you can only carry 2 items at a time. More often than not, you have to drop an item on a square in order to pick up another item. Which means that part of the game involves maneuvering around the squares not to pick up the wrong item, because it ends up wasting a turn. If you pick up the wrong item, then have to move to another square, drop the item, then move back again, that's another turn wasted. And in a game about time management, that can be a gigantic pain in the ass. But I think that's also part of the genre as well, and I think that's something you're either going to love or hate, because movement management, resource management, and time management are all sort of elements of the classic rogue-like game as well. Alright, what do we want to grab here? So, I'm looking at the 2 mates available. They're both rare beauty stats, which is good, so they both have kind of desirable traits, and they both give me a fame bonus for going with them, so I'm going to go, there we go, and now they're going to mate. Now, when they mate, they create offspring, and your offspring will be your next character. And his name is going to be Malik, and I get to flip over cards here. And it will show me some of them, so I can increase my life expectancy. There's also rare cards and trait cards to be found. So, I get some money, some more lifespan. That's a rare lifespan card. I get a Charmer hat. That's a trait. There's another trait. There's some more life expectancy, some gold, and we'll flip over 1 more for some gold. There we go. So, she starts with a bunch of money. And then perhaps my guys might be alive. Oh, one of them died in the process. This advances the game 16 turns. Then that's my character. This is my new guy. He inherits the wooden sword and the sunfire shield. And you then move on to the next generation and you try and go from there. So I might want to go to the volcano world, because apparently in 5 generations something horrible is going to happen there. But I'll probably need to look into making sure that I get the stats for it. A lot of the early game, every time you get a new generation, is going back to the areas that you built up earlier with these buildings, these like strongholds and things like that, and collecting their stuff. So I want extra strength, so I'm going to find some here. I go down here because I built up this big fortress town. I grab strength from here, and then I'll maybe go into the forest and explore it for some items. I'll go here, and then I'll go here. So there's an element of strategy to it, and an element of city development. It does kind of end quite early, which is a bit of a shame. Once you get, I think, to the 10th generation of heroes, you unlock, I think, every building in the game. As far as I know, there aren't any more, and I would like to show you the building options, actually, but yeah, you can see I could upgrade this and change it to a different thing, or I could demolish it. There's only 4 spaces usually around each town, so you've got to be very careful about what you build. It would be nice to see a little bit more of that. And, of course, the limitation of only carrying 2 items really limits the customization of the hero, I tend to find, which I'm not perhaps the world's biggest fan of. I'm going to grab this greedy trait because I don't need charm, or I already have the monument up, so anyone I want is going to mate with me there. There we go. Collect that. Collect that. Needs a bit more power, so I'm up to 76 now, which is good. Let's go collect this guy's grave. Now it's spawned yet more strength, so we're going to go grab that again. And that again. I think some people are going to find this process a little bit repetitive because, as I said, the first few turns, quite a lot of turns actually, are spent sort of powering up. And then you can go and fight whatever. So I could probably go fight a boss with 116 strength. That shouldn't be too much of a problem. Especially if I flip over to get 10 bonus strength here. There we go. So I could go now travel to this other area, which has got a completely different tile set. Go develop some stuff here in World 3 and so on and so forth. And, I mean, that's the gist of the game. Thankfully, I have the Sunfire Shield, which means I can actually walk over this stuff, although I'm actually taking no damage, so that's good. There we go. And you'll fight different monsters, you get a little bit of different music, and you'll sometimes encounter different things as well. So I've got into the lair here, which is going to warp me over here. And that would actually give me access to 2 treasure chests, but I don't have any keys, so there's no point in me doing that, so I might as well go back through. Alright, we're going to fight this guy. There we go. So I've had fun with it. Well, yeah, I think the development process is quite enjoyable, and it's got a decent amount of replayability as a result of the randomly generated worlds, which is quite cool. And I do like developing towns, although I do find the maintenance of said towns to be extremely annoying, as I mentioned earlier. Especially in the early game, having to run around with a hammer taking up one of your 2 item slots is kind of unreasonable. Unless you randomly get the builder trait, which allows you to repair without a hammer, it can become a gigantic waste of time. And there's a lot of time sinking involved in the game, but simultaneously I think the game requires that in order to make it strategic and actually put some skill and planning into it. Otherwise it would just be running around doing basically nothing, which is not really that fun. What are the quests here? There's probably a quest to find the secret of the monolith. Okay, I have no idea where the monolith is. There's actually a raft here that we could grab. Maybe if I drop my wooden sword and grab the raft. Oh, I got hit by a lightning storm of some description. An offering urn, alright. I do like the fact that every world has different things to drop into. I mean, I'm a big Heroes of Might and Magic fan, as you're probably well aware, so I like exploring overworlds and finding different things which will trigger. So apparently there's a puzzle here involving leaving items on the monolith or something along those lines. I'm not exactly sure what that's all about. I guess that unlocks it. Wow. So that unlocks, like, a hero of legend, apparently, if you grab him with some really desirable traits. That's actually extremely good. But getting 30,000 fame in order to unlock this, that's kind of a big objective. The thing is, those big objectives are what give the game replayability. Because what you're trying to do is discover the optimal way to do all of these things which seem to be extremely difficult. And you try and figure that out over time, and eventually your strategy gets more and more efficient. You figure out what to build at the right time. So if you can get past the initial flailing around and sort of not really knowing exactly what's going on, I think that you'll probably have a decent amount of fun with it. I played about 5 hours of the game and I haven't got bored of it yet. I think there's a lot to do, and it helps that every time you generate a new world, the worlds that are connected to it are different. So the lava world, the first time I played this, I only had access to the island world. Now I have access to the desert world and the lava world, which are randomly generated here. So I'm seeing different worlds and different areas to explore every time I go and check that out. So that makes me adopt my strategy a little bit, and it also just makes the game, frankly, a hell of a lot more interesting. And it's not exactly expensive, you know, it's a cheap and cheerful little game that has a decent amount going for it. It's a nice little mix of Heroes of Might and Magic, Civilization, and a roguelike or roguelite game. And you can pick it up for $15, which is not a terrible price. It's certainly flawed, and I think that for a lot of people it can get very repetitive. But personally, I quite like the idea. I think it's a nice little mashup of genres. And I found the game up to this point to be pretty compelling for the most part. If I had one massive complaint, it would be the simplicity of the combat system, but I can also see why they went for that. What would be nice is if you could skip these animations, because it can actually take up more time than perhaps you would otherwise desire. It would be nice just to have all of this happen. Why not have all this happen on the battle screen, on the overworld screen, for instance? Why does there need to be a separate battle screen? It doesn't benefit you. You don't get to make any choices on the battle screen. There are no abilities which let you make a choice or anything like that, which again means the combat system is extremely simplistic and there's very little character customization involved in it. So that's a weakness, but simultaneously, it's also very similar to the way that old-school roguelikes worked in the case of you literally just ran your head into the enemy until the enemy died or you did. So it's a bit of a throwback to that, but it also takes away the speediness and the immediacy of that form of combat, which I think was like a huge benefit to it. So it would be nice to throw away that battle screen and just make everything happen on the overworld screen. It would speed things up a little bit, maybe give you a few extra item slots, maybe give you a few abilities or something like that. Sometimes this happens as well as a bit of a bug, and it actually ends up breaking the game. So I've had this happen like twice. It's not particularly common, but it can happen, as you can see, which is a little bit unfortunate. It does generally clean itself up after it respawns the overworld, usually. Usually, hopefully it does that. It's got a bunch of good ideas in it, and I think some people are going to find it fairly compelling. I found it fairly compelling. I've had a bit of fun through it over the time. It's not been too shabby. I think it's a good start. If they were to make a sequel, I'd certainly like to see a lot more complexity involved in it. I'd like to see them either overhaul the combat system to make it faster, or overhaul the combat system to make it more complicated, one way or the other. If you're going to have a game which is focused a lot on combat, then maybe you want a little bit more than just watching a guy roll the dice and whack someone with a stick. That's not all that compelling to me. I don't enjoy watching it. I don't really enjoy playing it. Combat's such an integral part of the game as well that you'd expect perhaps a little bit more out of it. But the combination of the genres and different mechanics, I think, is serviceable. And as a result, with the whole breeding idea, I think it's got enough unique little features to maybe be worth a bash. If you've liked what you've seen here, and you do like roguelikes or roguelites with a little bit of strategy, and you also maybe enjoyed the way that, say, what was it, Rogue Legacy worked, then maybe this game might be for you. I certainly don't hate it. I've had a decent amount of fun with it. It's just, I'd like to see areas of it improved. My name's been TotalBiscuit. This has been a look at Hero Generations, which is available on Steam for $15 or your regional equivalent. My name has been TotalBiscuit. Hang on a minute, I just said that. Thank you very much for watching. So good we named it twice. I'll see you next time.